Thank you.
Yep.
Looks like we are live on YouTube. Mark, can you confirm that we are recording?
Mark, your voice got a lot higher.
Yes, we are recording, and as you can tell by the voice, and we are live on YouTube.
All right. Well, my name is Darius Shanfar. I'm board member and treasurer for the IDA and chair of the finance committee. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 12:16. Our first order of business is I seek a motion to approve and waive the reading of the minutes, which have been previously distributed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Lee, second.
I'll second that.
Okay, Tracy. Any discussion? Any changes? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. There is no report of the chief financial officer today or unfinished business, so I'll move right into new business, which is 62 State Street Associates. We are in a motion we have a possible motion for a public hearing resolution. So I guess, Andy, why don't you take us through 66 State Street Associates, LLC?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. I'll note for the record that representatives of the project are here with us today that can answer any questions that we may have. I will run through a project summary. The proposed project involves the historic redevelopment of an approximately 41,000 square foot structure at 66 State Street, 27 market rate residential apartments, and approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Project will also be utilizing historic tax credits in the 485A program. The estimated investment is approximately $7.3 million. We will run through the community benefits now, but I will note that since this project did not request real property tax abatements, these community benefits are for comparative purposes. This project was not scored through the project evaluation and assistance framework. Under revitalization target geography, the project is located downtown. The project is located in a high vacancy census tract. The project is located within the downtown bid. And the project is also located within the impact downtown neighborhood plan. Identified priorities.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Is that the rationale then for the community benefits, where it's located?
There are different categories
I
in the community
understand.
benefits framework scoring structure.
Yes.
With each having a specific intent.
Yes. My question is, no. My question is that there are no community benefit or community commitment on page 17. There are no community commitments listed. For instance, MWBE or DBE participation, or EEO workforce utilization. None of those are mentioned. Matter of fact, regional labor isn't even included, or city labor. No apprenticeship program. Those areas are blank. And is that because of what you just said in terms of what they were requesting in terms of financing? Or the lack of request?
Sure, let me tackle that, and we can have some of the rest of the board weigh in. The way that the performance evaluation assistance framework works is there are a number of areas under revitalization, investment, and employment, areas of community benefit that projects can bring along with the investment that they're making. And so there are a number of ways to score within those categories that will allow a project to reach a 10-point total that would make them eligible for our standard deviations, our standard pilots through the Industrial Development Agency. In order for a project to reach beyond those standard deviations and have a more beneficial pilot schedule, they would be able to select at least 3 community commitment categories, the ones that you just ran through, Lloyd, to be able to either achieve a 10 if they didn't achieve a 10 through the other community benefits that they were bringing to the table, or to go beyond the 10 points and get a more beneficial pilot schedule. It's not necessarily to say that these projects aren't doing some of those already. Many of the projects that are not committing to them through the pilot will also use the percentage required for regional labor or for local labor, for instance. They may be using some of the other categories on that as well. But in order, the project in front of us currently is not seeking a sort of special deviation from our standard pilot schedules within the framework. They were able to achieve their 10 points in those other community benefit categories.
The other categories other than community commitment, you mean?
Things that include,
Like
so those are
identified priority. What else do you have? Target geography. In those areas, you're saying they make up enough in terms of the 10 points. So
correct.
they have to deal with the issue of community commitment.
They would not necessarily need to report to the IDA on those community commitment categories, correct?
Okay, so I'm feeling.
Darius, you're on mute if you were trying to, Darius, you're on mute. Darius is trying to jump in, he's on mute.
A little concerned about the fact that community commitment then seems not to typically be a priority of the IDA. It's only there to assist people to meet their 10-point score for additional information that will help them meet their 10-point score. In other words, MWBE and EEO, as well as regional labor and City of Albany labor, are not required for IDA projects. You can have projects without any of those categories being involved, correct?
That is correct. And that I would not characterize it as not a priority of the Industrial Development Agency. The reason that they are included in order for a project to be able to have enhanced benefit, they have to meet some of those categories. And so those were categories that were established as priorities for the Industrial Development Agency, with the board having gone through the process to create the performance evaluation assistance framework. The whole genesis behind that was recognizing that any revitalization project in the City of Albany has a very difficult tax structure and requires some level of financial assistance to move forward. And that there are a number of priorities, including historic rehabilitation, including employment, including working through the implementation of our neighborhood revitalization plans in some of our most distressed areas of the city, and that those require a baseline level of financial assistance to be able to make happen. To go above and beyond those.
Lloyd, I'm going to have.
Great, Darius. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to finish up by saying to go beyond that level. It's the.
Please.
Sorry, just to wrap up by saying to go beyond those baseline levels, it's the additional priority of the IDA to ask people to look at those enhanced sort of reach categories on these. Sorry, Darius, go ahead.
So again, they're not required. It is not a priority.
Correct.
It's not a priority to have MWBE, DBE, or EEO qualifications or requirements or ratings or anything else along those lines in order to go through with an IDA project.
They are not required. That's correct. As long as they, meet the 10-point criteria, they are not required to move forward with a basic pilot within the framework.
So again, it's not only are they not required, but they're not the priority of the IDA to have minority disadvantaged business or EEO participating in our projects. that is not an issue or an area that the IDA feels is important enough to include in all of the projects that it undertakes, like the state would do, or even the city government would do.
I wouldn't characterize it that way, but what I'd like to do right now is let Andrew finish up with the project. Then I want to hear from the developer and some of the issues that you raised, and then we can have a little further discussion at that point. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Picking up on identified priority, the project involves the historic preservation of the property. It engages a vacant property and qualifies as a downtown residential project. For identified growth area, the proposed project involves the conversion of a property to a residential use. Under job creation, the project is committing to the creation of 1 permanent job and 50 construction jobs. And for investment, the project is anticipating a cost of more than $7 million. And again, the project is only requesting the agency to examine requests for mortgage recording tax exemptions and sales and use tax exemptions only. There is no request of the agency for a real property tax exemption.
All right. So just to recap on this, there's no pilot through the IDA. These are sales tax and mortgage tax recording exemptions that are seeking, and they're going through the 45A program within the city.
Correct.
All right. Now, I think the developers are here. I would like them to speak to some of the issues that Lloyd raised on MWBE and use of the City of Albany labor, et cetera, if they have any comments.
Yeah, Darius, thank you. Jeff won't be joining us today, but my name is Joe Pernacheo. I work for Jeff and the gang over at Redburn. And we certainly will be using regional contractors on this job, possibly City of Albany contractors. And I think just on this specific project, we just didn't commit to that on the application for one reason or another. But on all of our projects in the city, we certainly do use regional labor. We use minority and women business enterprises here and there. But for one reason or another, because we didn't need it for the pilot, we just didn't request it on this project or didn't commit to it on the application, but we certainly do use them.
All right, Lloyd, do you want to discuss anything further?
No. You've used them on other projects that you worked for that you've done for IDA, correct?
Yeah, we have used regional labor on other projects such as the Kenmore. That was an IDA project, not a pilot project, just sales and mortgage tax exemptions. But we have used regional labor and City of Albany labor on other projects, certainly.
Okay.
And will most likely on this one as well.
And of note that the community commitment checklist, that is really for evaluation of projects seeking a pilot through the IDA. It's really for informational purposes when projects are coming through looking only for sales and mortgage recording tax exemption. It's additional information for us to have, but in terms of the project evaluation and assistance framework, check marks, those are used by the IDA in policy for pilot requests.
Only.
Correct.
I see. And what would be the percentage of pilot request projects that the IDA does on a standard basis?
I don't know that off the top of my head. We can get you the figures of what the number of projects that come in for the full suite of assistance versus sales and mortgage recording tax exemptions. We do have a policy, as you're aware, that projects that are eligible for the 485A program and historic tax credits that can use them, they are directed to use those City of Albany programs instead of seeking a pilot through the Industrial Development Agency. So I would say that there's 0% of the projects that are eligible for the 485A and historic tax credits that seek a pilot through the IDA because there's a city resource available to them.
Lloyd, it might be helpful at some point in the near future to have us talk to you about how we arrived at our matrix. We spent considerable time, I mean, many months, and seeked outside third-party input in order to put together a standardization of what our requirements would be in order to secure the pilot, within the framework, or if they were, additional pilot breaks beyond that. And so unfortunately, you don't have the benefit of the research that we did and how we compiled it. But again, happy to review that at some point in the future.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? I think we have before us essentially looking for a motion to move this to a public hearing where these issues can be discussed further. Is there a motion on the table?
So moved.
Tracy, second.
Second.
Lee? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we'll move on to the next project on the list, which is, let's see, that was 66 State. So this is 61 North Pearl. Yes. 61 North Pearl LLC. Sorry, I'm just going through my paperwork here. And for that, I'm going to throw it back to Andrew for a discussion. We're going to be we have before us a public hearing resolution as well. So possible net positive or negative recommendation for it. So take it away.
Thank you. I'll run through a summary, and as we see, Joe is here, that representative of the developer, to answer any additional questions. The project involves the proposed historic redevelopment of an approximately 40,000 square foot structure at 61 North Pearl Street into 15 market rate apartments while maintaining approximately 13,000 square feet of commercial space. The estimated investment of this proposed project is approximately $4.7 million. And again, for comparative purposes, I will run through the community benefits. For the revitalization target geography, the project is located downtown. The project is located in a high vacancy census tract. The project is located within the downtown bid, and the project is located within the boundaries of the Impact Downtown Neighborhood Plan. For identified priority, the project involves the historic preservation of the property and qualifies as a downtown residential project. Identified growth area, the proposed project involves the conversion of a property to residential use. Job creation, the project is committing to the retention of 8 permanent jobs and the creation of 25 construction jobs. And again, the investment exceeds $4 million. Similar to the project we just discussed, the request at hand is for sales and mortgage recording tax exemptions only. There is no request for a real property tax abatement through this agency. The applicant will be seeking the 485A program.
Great, thank you. Any other comments here? Questions? All right. Just note for the record, this is the old Jillian's building, correct? The old pool hall, kind of?
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Yeah, and as Andrew said, again, there's no pilot being requested. There's sales and mortgage recording taxes only, and the 45A program is going to be utilized at the city. Excuse me. So what we have before us today is requesting a motion for a positive recommendation for a public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Darius.
Tracy, second.
I can second again.
Lee, okay. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. So we'll have our second public hearing before our next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. From there, we have a project introduction for TR Hackett LLC in a new apartment building, I think fairly close to McDonald's, if I'm not mistaken, on Hackett Boulevard. Andrew?
Yes, great. Thank you, Darius. Appreciate it. I will give a very brief introduction and then I will turn things over to the applicant, Ron Stein, who is here with us today. TR Hackett is located on Hackett Boulevard at the intersection of Besh and Hackett. The proposed project involves the construction of an approximate 60,000 square foot, 4-story market rate apartment complex containing 39 residential units. The site is currently vacant. The project will also include 44 off-street covered parking spaces. And with that, I will turn it over to Ron.
Yeah, hi. I think nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me today. Back again. We've had 2 successful projects go through IDA in the past. The Reserve 1 at 85 Dana and the Reserve 2 at 86 Dana across the street on Dana off of New Scotland, which are doing very well and meeting all the goals and working with Andrew and his team to ensure that. This is sort of the next, the third model, very similar design, but on the other side of Albany Med. I would say it's on the more towards the corner of Hackett and Crown. The address is Besh, but Besh is up the hill and looks over, kind of the road ends. Not too close to McDonald's. It's down the street and just tucked away there. We've had a lot of demand for these type of units from mostly local workers who want to either walk or bike to work, and we know that there's an issue there that's where the location of the property has been a known issue with water and drainage, and the site is actually was discovered that is one of the sites where it's supposed to drain and has been broken for years. So this will actually fix that and includes an extra, not just under the building water detention center, but another one adjacent to it on the parking lot next to it underground to help with flood water and stormwater. So, I think you've seen the package. I don't have control of any screens on this. They're to the higher end of the market. The parking was very important to have underneath. It's very popular, mostly for the cars that people keep in there for the weekend use. We probably have, I'd say 85% of our buildings currently in this kind of model walk to work or bike. Andrew, is there anything else I should be touching upon, or does anybody have any questions that they want me to walk through?
As after yesterday, I think expanding underground water retention is a good thing.
So I have one question, one comment. The question, Ron, do you believe the mitigation that you're going to do, is that going to alleviate upper, is that connected to where it floods above on Hackett, where St. James comes down? Is that linked at all?
No, it's
No.
really for the gully that's there right now and the feed off from the hotel that's not being done properly.
Okay, all right. And the comment is maybe the Reserve at Hackett will be the new landmark rather than McDonald's. So
Thank you. And they keep trying to put some kind of other fast food in the corner. I'm trying to prevent that as well. I really want the neighborhood to grow. This adds value. We've seen it add value. A lot of things we talked about previously at IDA several years ago with Sarah was, can it add value to the neighborhood? And if you walk down Dana, almost, I'd say more than half of the buildings have either been fixed or are being renovated right now locally. People are now really maintaining the properties in the street and trying to make the neighborhood continue to improve. So we're excited by it. The demand is still very high. We have a wait list. And we have people, it's slightly different because it's a little to the back. So there are some workers that work toward the back of Albany Med that come out that driveway. So again, we're hoping this alleviates a lot of some traffic even for the commuters there. That's who we see.
It's so glad to see when a project works, but also when it really has such a positive impact on the neighborhood, like you said, and causes additional investment. So it's obviously one of the priorities of the IDA.
And to Lloyd's point, we do the community workers. We have the regional workers for sure. I think that's mainly important. I think we hit like something like 97% regional on our last project, in the 90s for sure, for our last two projects. Like the last one was 97%.
Look at the projected net operating income, the margins look pretty slim here. Am I reading that correctly?
They are, unfortunately, we're not in the same environment we were, 4 years ago. The margins are a lot slimmer and, costs are a lot higher. I'm hoping with timing and maybe Canada opening up, the wood prices, different prices will come down.
Okay.
And we're having a worker shortage. I think everybody's aware of it. It's not anecdotal, it's actual. And I deal with it each and every day.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments, observations? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
that was just a project introduction, so no action is required.
Yep.
So move on to the next project introduction of 191 North Pearl Street, LLC. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. This project may be familiar to some of us. A previous iteration had come through the agency about 4 years ago. This project, very similar to that iteration. The proposed project consists of the construction of an approximately 26,000 square foot market rate apartment complex with 18 apartments. It's on the corner of Wilson and North Pearl, across from the Federal Building. And the site is currently vacant and will also include 15 off-street covered parking spaces. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ron.
Hi again, it's me. I saw everybody else doing stuff on North Pearl, so I thought maybe it was my turn. I can join the Redburn gang. It's a very interesting, Peter Tryon, who's works with Blue House Companies, on the call too. He's the building manager and a broker. And we were on a planning call when I saw this project, or Peter saw it, looked at me, called Rudy, and we bought the project because we want to see it get developed. It was about 5 years. I think it was approved in 16, 17. We kept the footprint of the original one with the 18 units, but added our underground parking. We're working with Historic right now with the facade to match the neighborhood, I think, a lot better. And so do they. We changed the formats and look and feel of the internal units to match what we know the demand will be, and bring that kind of reserve now to North Pearl, away from the hospital, and try something out there at an 18 unit. Hopefully it works.
Great. Any questions or further information?
Just an additional thing to your point, Darius.
Yep.
We're looking to do this project with Hackett sort of back to back, to try to maybe also gain some benefit of having some of our subs move over and get a better pricing.
Great.
Smart.
All right. Again, this is just an introduction, so we don't need to take any action here, but I imagine we'll be learning more as we go along and taking some action in the not too distant future.
And as the committee has a chance to digest the information and come up with questions, reach out to us, and we'll reach back out to Ron, get anything answered that we can for you over the next month prior to bringing it back to finance.
Great.
Always happy and available to answer questions or talk about the project.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. So on to our next item of business. AFP 107 Corp, the Hilton Albany. They have made a request of relief, and I don't know if we need to go into an executive session to discuss this.
We'll be able to introduce it in open session. We may choose, the committee chooses to seek advice that the council would go into exempt session for that, but we can have Tom and Andy run through an overview of the application and have Jake and representatives of the Hilton speak as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great.
Have at it.
Thank you. In May of 2021, the IDA received a letter from counsel from AFP 107 Corp., the entity that owns the Hilton Albany, requesting relief in the form of pilot modifications as well as adjustments to benefits payments in a related project benefits agreement as a result of the impacts of COVID-19 that has faced the Albany Hilton, the details of which we'll go through in a minute. This letter comes after several conversations staff and our special counsel at Hutch and Russ had with AFP 107 Corp. Since late of 2020, which we apprised the committee and the board of, in which we sought examples from the hotel of similar requests that have been granted either nationally or throughout New York State. As background, in 2011, as part of an option to purchase title from the state, Albany Hotel Inc., the then owner of the Crown Plaza, requested and was approved by the IDA to enter into a straight lease agreement, which included sales and use tax exemptions and pilot payments, as well as a separate project benefits agreement, which included community payments. In 2015, as part of the conversion to the Hilton Albany, the agreements were assigned to AFP 107 Corp. The pilot agreement runs on a fixed schedule from 2012 to 2042, after which the property goes to 100% of taxation. In 2021, the pilot payment was $466,148, which was made earlier this year. The project benefits agreement includes a community benefit payment of $100,000 between 2012 and 2026, and the community benefit payment for 2021 has not been made. The request from AFP 107 Corp. Is the following. Between 2021 to 2025, they're seeking a 50% reduction in the pilot. From 2026 to 2030, they're seeking to hold the pilot at the current 2021 level of $466,148. The request also seeks to reduce the community commitment payment by 50% between 2021 and 2026. And in total, the request is seeking assistance totaling approximately $2.6 million. Last, the request includes a waiver from the 160 FTE jobs commitment under the agreements for 2020 and 2021. And at this time, I'd like to call on Jake Lammy, counsel to AFP 107 Corp. And Tony Maselli, the owner.
Thank you, Thomas. Good afternoon. I'm Jake Lammy from the law firm of Monaco, Cooper, Lammy & Carr. And as Tom mentioned, with me today is Tony Maselli, the president of AFP 107 Corp., which is the entity that owns and operates the Albany Hotel, the Hilton Albany. First off, thank you to the board and to the finance committee and Sarah and the rest of the IDA staff and Joe, Scott, for the time and effort that you've given to this matter to date. I understand that the board members have received a copy of my letter and have considered the information that Tom had just presented, wherein the Hilton Albany, excuse me, has requested relief from its various payment obligations that Tom just went through due to the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been just devastating to the hotel. The Hilton Albany is asking for relief from the community benefit payment obligations, the pilot payment, and the FTE requirements. And we have provided information about other IDAs in New York State providing similar relief to hotels based on the pandemic. The Capital Region Chamber has submitted a letter, excuse me, has submitted a letter to the IDA in support of the Hilton Albany's request, noting the symbiotic relationship between the city, the county, and the Hilton Albany, and how essential the hotel is to downtown's viability. We're here to answer any questions you may have. Tony Maselli is available as well to chime in.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments while we're here?
Excuse me.
Agreement that was made between the hotel and the community benefits agreement, that was made with the city or with the IDA?
So it's a project benefits agreement between the IDA and what was then the entity was the Albany Hotel Inc., but now is AFP 107 Corp.
Right. Now, and the amount, I think one amount that he mentioned was 126,000 or something along those lines.
So it's a payment from 2012 to 2026 of $100,000 per year.
It went directly to the IDA,
That is correct.
and the IDA designated those funds to go towards a particular project or just to the general administration of the IDA itself?
So those come into to the General Industrial Development Agency. The agency has used its fees over the years for things like revitalization studies, market studies to support the Arbor Hill Community Center and other activities along the way that are strategic activities for the organization.
Okay, so there is no identifiable projects or entities or programs or things along those lines that those funds are used for. They're just generally distributed by the IDA based on
Correct. There's no restrictions.
board.
There's no
Right.
restrictions on its use except for the restrictions that we have to abide by within state statute.
I see. Okay. Now, when the decision was made to for this community benefit agreement for that particular funding, that $100,000 over that period of time, was that a decision? Were there community organizations and representatives that were put together that would assist the IDA and how those funds might be distributed?
That was a negotiation between the applicant at the time and the Industrial Development Agency Board.
Between the who? Applicant.
The applicant and the board.
I thought you said the applicant. Okay. But the community itself was not involved in that decision at all, right?
Outside of the typical public process that we have that includes public hearings.
Comment and yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And so we'd have to go back to the public hearing transcript record on that to determine what the public involvement was on that.
Yeah.
Mr. Stewart, I was going to chime in and on that if I may. I believe it's section 3.02 of the project benefit agreement. I'm looking at it right now. The only mention of the annual community benefit payment in that agreement, it's one sentence. It says to pay the agency an annual community development fee in an amount equal to $100,000 each January 15th from 2012 to 2026.
Right.
There was no mention as to what it was for.
Yeah, and at this point in time, what you're trying to do is restructure that agreement to give some relief to the hotel based on what is happening or what has happened with the COVID, with their response to COVID. So you would be restructuring that entire agreement, at least with respect to the actual dollars that are being paid and maybe the period in time in which those dollars would be paid, correct?
We're looking for as much relief as the IDA can and is willing to provide to the hotel under the project benefit agreement and the pilot agreement, just given the devastation to the hotel, which again, Mr. Maselli is available to chime in on if you all wish to hear it.
And in doing so, there wouldn't be any true objection if you're going to restructure the deal. There shouldn't be too much objection to the restructuring of the manner in which those funds would be distributed and who would be involved in that distribution, correct?
Well, Lloyd, that would be, obviously another conversation, within the IDA to discuss that, how those funds would be used further.
And who would be involved in the decision making?
Well, that's, again, we would look to, as a board, discuss, potentially how we would like to, handle those funds in the future if we chose to handle things differently. rather than putting them into the general fund. But again, as Sarah had mentioned, in the general, these aren't restricted funds. But we certainly, do provide a level of funding from an economic development standpoint, through the IDA. But really the request at hand has to do with the Hilton looking for relief from their obligations to the city. And I would recommend, I actually would like to hear from the owner in terms of, I understand it was, devastating economic impact. I'll go with psychological too. We've all been through, a really rough time, but if you could speak a little bit about, how you see things reopening, at the Hilton. I know the Times Union is starting to have events, as well as, the Capitol Center. Everything takes time. It takes longer than we want it to. But I'd like to hear some more on that subject, please.
Of course, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you today. As been noted, Sarah and her staff were kind enough to meet with us in December. We provided a summary of the situation, then along with our requested relief. Since then, we'd hoped that there would be a legislative solution or a dramatic improvement in business, but neither of those have occurred. So we're here today to renew that request. I understand you all have a copy of that presentation, so I won't repeat it in detail, but just to update you and summarize you on what we've endured over the last year, I would point out a few things. In the 12 months between April of 2020 and March of 21, really the pandemic timeframe, when compared to the same time a year earlier, the Hilton Albany experienced an 80% decline in revenue. We had 65,000 less occupied rooms. Our monthly occupancy rates averaged less than 20%, with several of those being in the single digits. 25,000 less customers in the restaurant and lounge, and more than 100,000 fewer banquet and catering customers at events that we hosted. We've suffered losses in every month during that period, and they're now aggregating almost an 8-digit amount. As you all know, the legislature has not been in session for more than a year and isn't expected to return until 2022. Most of the public buildings in town remain closed with no announced reopening dates. All of the large convention and association events were canceled in 2020 and 2021, and most have not yet been rebooked for 2022, including the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus and Somos, many of which are still considering holding virtual events instead. Their memberships have declined, which have also created financial concerns for their hosting such events as well. The Times Union Center, as you know, has been used as a vaccination and testing site and only has a handful of events scheduled for the balance of this year. The Empire State Convention Center has no scheduled events at this point for the remainder of 2021. And as I understand it, there's like one downtown restaurant that's currently fully open. In the surrounding areas, Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame ceremony has been moved to a virtual indoor event, rather than the usual weekend event. We're a hotel dependent on group association business. We have 37,000 square feet of meeting space, and it's likely going to be several years before we return to the number of events and the size of the events that we hosted, in 2019. This has all taken a great strain on our ability to remain open, which we've done throughout, and our viability going forward. And for all these reasons, we ask for your consideration and support, of this request. If anyone has any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to address them. But again, thank you all for your time today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I have one question. Basically, how much federal relief did the hotel gain over the past year?
There were two PPP programs that we participated in. One in the spring of 2020, it was approximately $1.5 million, and another one in the spring of 21 that we're just concluding, that is approximately the same amount. And that was used to employ our staff, even though business conditions didn't warrant it with 20% or less in occupancy. We didn't need to bring back that staff, but those funds were primarily used to do that and keep as many people as employed during that time as we could.
I will say my thoughts on this as the tax collector and the pilot collector. Generally speaking, I think we're going to have a rough go of it if we are going to treat the Hilton any differently from a tax standpoint and a delinquent tax standpoint as we do any other business or any other property owner. I will say that I think it's certainly reasonable to provide some leeway on the job requirements. I think that's just basically necessary for I think businesses at this time. It just you can't meet the same requirements that you did when everything is fully open. And then on the community development fee side, I think that's something that's outside the scope of a pilot and our tax. And so that's something that I think we could probably work with some way to delay or postpone payment. But those are my thoughts. And I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to bring in. I think we may want to go to executive session to discuss the legalities of this. But if anybody else has any other questions or comments at this point, please bring them forth.
Darius, can I chime in on the pilot payment side of that real quick?
Sure.
So I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to read or look further into the Geneva IDA issue. It was very similar for a Ramada hotel that was on the lake out there in the Finger Lakes. The IDA's counsel there advised the board that it was legal to renegotiate those payments, and the city treasurer was charged with doing that because the amount of the payments that were being collected was not changing. It was just being reallocated and redistributed. So I don't know the specifics of what that was. I don't remember off the top of my head, but if 2 or 3 years of payments is either moved to the end of the agreement or that money's taken and sprinkled over the remaining years, the same amount is being collected. So it's not like there's any less amount there. I only mentioned that just based on what you just said, knowing our ask was our ask, just and the request was based on the viability of the hotel and from just a general broader picture standpoint. The future is unknown, and to the extent that the IDA denies the request or that the industry doesn't turn around and that the Hilton's able to get some of its business back, which everyone's acknowledged in the industry is going to take multiple years. Even if everything opened today, the business isn't going to come back, I think, as Tony was just mentioning. So but if this hotel operator isn't able to make it, I think it's reasonable to expect that a subsequent purchaser of the property will likely be back on the IDA's doorstep and asking for a pilot because of the nature of the hotel industry and how it's still in ruins. And the HERO Act would still be hanging over a subsequent operator's head, and it would. I just think the IDA would have to be even more generous to entice a new buyer to take that over. And I realize that that's not. I don't want to paint a bleak picture and forecast into the future, but I'm just looking big picture and looking down the road.
Chair, will you entertain a question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. You said that the Geneva IDA had determined that it was legal to renegotiate the pilot payments. Who made that determination, please?
I was just quoting from the Finger Lakes Times article, and that was a direct quote from it, that the IDA and their counsel out there, I'd have to look into who that was, but that was
So that was an internal decision. There was no statewide determination that this is unacceptable.
I don't know if ABO got involved in that or not. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say a delay and restructure is different than a waiver of any of the the payments for sure.
Yeah, and I
Um,
don't understand that any settlement has been agreed to. It's, again, it was determined that they could move forward with further discussions and negotiations, but I don't believe that any changes have been, approved.
Mhm.
My
And that
question,
is one of the matters that we'll be able to talk about in exempt session with council. I was prepared to talk through that particular issue. Sorry, Tracy, but go ahead with the rest.
I just wanted to ask about the current lender. I know your letter says that you are in default. Are they, do you expect to restructure? Be able to restructure with them?
Our lender is a CMBS lender. We are still in default. We are in discussions with them, and we are hopeful to be able to work out a restructuring to solve that. But we haven't accomplished that just yet.
Thank you. Yeah, I would make a motion to head into executive session.
Okay.
I did see that Lee had his hand up a couple of times to weigh in before we did that.
Yeah, so my question, Tony, is the labor force. I know the PPPs are structured to retain them. Do you have any idea on how many employees you were able to retain, or how many are there now, or give us some kind of indication of who's left? Is it only office staff? Is it, lower positions? What's going on with the restaurant, et cetera?
Sure. So as of right now, we're still in the second PPP run. I think the end of this week. So we've brought back a full complement, some banquet staff, some restaurant staff. Business levels don't warrant it, but we do need the FTEs in order to obtain forgiveness for that. We have applied for, but have not yet received forgiveness of the first PPP loan, but we met the FTE requirements in order to do that, and believe we'll do that a second time. During those, 2 8-week periods, we did bring back the staff at, virtually a full complement in order to accomplish that, because that's what you needed to do in order to meet the same FTE requirements of the measurement period, which was a year earlier. Outside of those 2 8-week periods, we scale down as best we can to reduce our losses and maintain, what we needed to operate. So if occupancy or demand was at, a higher level for a week or so for whatever reason, then obviously we bring back people to meet that need, and then drop down below because of the, union agreement there and the collective bargaining agreement. The responsibilities that have to be met by union staff have always, been met in that regard. So it's not just management. But as you know, there's also been, government restrictions. So there were many months, last year where the restaurant was closed, we could not, serve anybody. Same with, banquet and catering events. So obviously, we complied with that as was required.
So understood that. Yep. So, thank you.
And I would just add, listen, I understand this is, an extreme and unusual request. Tried to express, just the severity of the situation. The hotel in downtown Albany is dependent upon the legislature and these larger events, which we all understand have been non-existent. And, we're not yet seeing, things rebook going forward. So we've got some difficult decisions to make as we move forward, and whatever relief you can provide would be extremely appreciated and beneficial to us. And, we don't know where things are going to take us in the months ahead, but anything that can be provided that can help us in that regard would be extremely appreciated. Thank you again.
Can I just add one piece of information on the employment side as well, Mr. Eck? I think this, you may recall in the March Finance Committee meeting, Mr. Conoscenti had gone through all the projects and the FTE reporting requirements, and the Hilton Albany at that time, at least my notes were from that meeting, were that you guys recognized the impact on the hospitality and retail side, and the Hilton Albany reported at 71%. So 114 out of 160 jobs.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So we have a motion on the table to go into an executive session to discuss the legalities of this. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Tony? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All right. I think we have a unanimous. All those opposed? All right. So I think we're going to set out an executive session, and then we will be back in a few minutes.
Just a moment and I'll move you over.
Thank you.
Just point of information, Darius, we're live now.
And we have everybody back? Is everybody back? Yeah? All right. So we exited executive session about 1:41. It's now 1:42, and we are reconvening back for regular session. No action was taken. However, we did have much discussion over the request. And I think we will basically send this back for further discussion between staff and Hilton AFP 107. Very generally speaking, I think we see some issues with modification of the pilot, and we see more leeway on the community benefit agreement side and the FTE side. But I think that's something that we can have further discussion with staff and the applicant. Anything else we should mention, Sarah or Joe?
I think any decision by the board, we would expect that there would be action at a future finance committee and board meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we look forward to some further conversations.
Thank you
very much.
And to staff.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Now on to our last item of business today, and that is Liberty Park. So, Joe, why don't you?
Sorry, Chair. Do we want to go on and move the agenda so that this is the last item, so that CAC staff can? We had talked a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know, does that work for you, Sarah?
Yeah.
We were trying to think through how to make this more administratively easy for people.
No, I thought this was the last item, but I didn't realize other business was on there as well. So I'm gonna go to the agency update and compliance update.
Sure, and I do think that this will be quick, and I'm looking at Tom. I don't believe we have a compliance update, so it'll just be the agency update. And I'm going to end on really great news, but we'll go in order. I do want to mention that we are coming to the close of the New York State legislative session. There are a significant number of bills in both the Senate and the Assembly that directly impact industrial development agencies. We're working with the Economic Development Council to understand the implications of those bills. There are a number that have already passed either the Senate or the Assembly. And there are 3 bills that have passed both houses. At this point, I'll be able to bring a more fully detailed update on some of the highlights of that legislation to the board meeting next week. And I'll send around a little bit of a summary to the board members prior to that meeting. So keep your eyes on that legislative session, because there's a number of things there. I did just want to mention before the news gets cold that a number of board members were able to participate in the grand opening of the home leasing project on Clinton Avenue. As you'll recall, that's a $50 million investment within a mile span on Clinton Avenue and adjacent streets that rehabbed 70 plus buildings that were in various stages of abandonment, decay, and disuse. Without the Industrial Development Agency's involvement there, that project would never have happened, and is really a huge one from an implementation of community revitalization strategies standpoint. And so it was great to hear not only from the players involved in that, but also from the tenants that are currently living there. So if you haven't had a chance yet to go see those, please reach out. We can set something up with home leasing and definitely walk up and down the street and just sort of marvel at what a great job that those guys have been doing. So just a note there. And in other good news, I do want to acknowledge that on behalf of the chair and myself and the staff, we want to acknowledge that Andy has been named to an official role with the IDA as Project Services Director. It's the first time that we've had that position at the IDA. He's going to continue and even deepen his role in being able to shepherd projects through the process. It was incredible that he stepped up to take that title on, and it's a testament to his good work over the years at the IDA.
Congratulations, Andy. Well deserved. Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you. Truly appreciate it.
Awesome.
Is there a clap emoji? There it is.
There
Okay.
it is.
All right.
Fantastic.
Congratulations,
great.
Dan. Nice, very nice.
All right. Anything else?
That is it on my end.
Okay. Now, Joe, why don't you talk to us about Liberty Park?
We'll recuse ourselves based on our previous disclosure, both staff of Capitalize Albany and our overlapping board member, Susan Petto, as well. So we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next week. Bye, Susan.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
So what we should do, Darius, is make a motion, someone should make a motion to go
Yep.
into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
I'll make that motion, Darius.
All right. Tracy, second. Tony, all's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. To executive session we go.
Just one moment, please, and I'll open the breakout room.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Darius. You're muted.
All right, we exited executive session around 2:06. It's now 2:07. We're back in regular session. No action was taken in executive session. We discussed pending legal matter of Liberty Park. With that, there being no more business, I'd call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Tracy.
And I'll step up to a second.
All right, Lee. All those in favor? Aye. We hereby stand adjourned. Thank you.
You have a good.
Have a great day.